In today's class, we are going to understand the behavior of different methods. So this is the main topic for today's class. You need to know the behavior of various methods inside OData web services. So you can see here, I'm just trying to log in to UI5 server. So after connecting to UI5 server, I'm just using SEGW. And in SEGW, you can see something like there will be several services, but inside each service, yesterday we have created some service. For example, we have created some runtime artifacts here. And the most important for developer is a DPC extension class. The most important class is DPC extension class. So let me double click that and you can see you'll get several methods like this. So the point here is you need to know what are the important parameters and the behavior of the various methods. So first of all, you can see there is a method like getEntity. That is one of the method available for every entity set. GetEntity is one of the method available for every entity set. So let us understand its behavior. GetEntity method. So generally what happens is it looks like this. There will be SAP UI5 or Fiori frontend. There will be UI5 or Fiori frontend app. So there may be app like this. And definitely there will be an OData ABAP service. OData ABAP service. And in OData ABAP service, we are going to write our functionality. But the most important point is if you are using getEntity method, getEntity method contains some parameters. So you can select that method, you can go to parameter section here. So when you go to parameter section, there are several parameters, but I'll try to highlight the important parameters now. For getEntity method, there are some parameters here. There are some parameters here. So the most important parameter is IT key tab. IT key tab is one of the important parameter and ER entity is another important parameter. So without using these things, the development will not go further or development cannot proceed further. There may be several things, but we need to have a grip on the important things. So one is IT key tab and ER entity. And you can see here, IT key tab is your importing parameter, ER entity is exporting parameter. IT key tab is importing, ER entity is exporting. So that means I can say from front end, user may give some input. From front end, the user may give input and he may expect some output. User gives some input and he can expect some output in the front end. And say, for example, if I'm developing a service using getEntity method, third, the most important is IT key tab. And the another parameter is ER entity. So for this method, I can say the input coming from UI5 ERE front end will be captured by IT key tab parameter. This will capture the input which is coming from front end. And after executing some functionality, you can write whatever functionality you want. Implement some functionality or coding, whatever. But after implementing some functionality, the method will send our record to the front end by using ER entity as an output. So these are the things that you need to notice. So the input coming from front end by IT key tab if you are using getEntity method. And the output coming from OData service can be sent to front end. Of OData service can be sent to front end here by using ER entity parameter. So one is for input, another is for output in simple words. How to receive the data from front end, how to send the data to front end, that is important, and these two things will happen by using method parameters. So let me tell you here, method parameters are used for sending or receiving the data between OData ABAP service and front-end application. That is the main theme of method parameters here. Method parameters are used for sending or receiving data between OData ABAP service and the front-end application. And in case of getEntity method, I can say IT key tab is for receiving the input from front end. And ER entity, it is for sending the output to the front end. Very simple. So according to the diagram, you can easily understand. So before proceeding, you need to know the important things and important parameters. Similarly, there is one more method that is like getEntitySet method. There is one more method like getEntitySet method. So under getEntitySet method, let us check what are the important parameters. You can see there is a getEntitySet. It's a method, and it also contains parameters. You can select that. You can go to parameter section, and here the important parameters are something like IV filter string, and IT key tab, and you can say ET entity set. ET entity set, IV filter string, IT key tab, these are generally very important. So let me write that. IT key tab, another one is IT filter string, then ET entity set. These are the three important parameters of this method. So in simple words, again, it looks same. You can see if you are using get entity set method, it looks same. So input coming from front end is captured by OData service under get entity set method. Get entity set is a method. And get entity set method will capture the input by using IT key tab, and it also will make use of IV filter string. There are two important parameters. Both we are going to use it in different situations. So these two are IT key tab, IV filter string. These two are used to capture the input coming from front end. It is to capture the input coming from front end. So after capturing the input coming from front end, you can write whatever code you want, and ultimately the data is transferred to front end by using ED entity set. ET entity set. So that is responsible for sending output records to front end. So the records from OData service will be transferred to front end by using ET entity set here. That is the point. So let me write that description here. IT key tab for receiving the input from front end under this method, and ET entity set is for sending the output to front end applications. Very simple. And let me go to the third method. There is create underscore entity method. Create underscore entity method. So let us see what are the important parameters of that method. Let us see what are the important parameters of that method. Create underscore entity is a method. So let us see what exactly it contains. Create entity, and you can go to parameter section. Under parameter section, there is one important thing, that is IO data provider. That is the most important one. So IO data provider. So this is for receiving the input record from front-end application. IO data provider is one of the parameter for receiving the input record from front-end application. And if you want to send anything to front-end, if you want to send anything to front-end by using this method, then you have to use ER entity. That's another parameter. Some output to front-end. So different methods will have different parameters. That is the point here. Different methods contains different parameters. Please notice that. Don't expect same parameter for all the methods. Now similarly, there is another method like update entity. That's another method. And let us check what are the parameters of that method. Update entity, if you select this method and you can go to parameter section here. Select the method, go to parameter section, and here also the two important parameters are IO data provider, ER entity. These two are important. So let me just note that in case of update entity method, IO data provider is for receiving the input record from front end. And ER entity is for sending output to front end. So these are the two important parameters of update entity method. Similarly, delete entity is another method here. So that how you will know these are important, by experience you'll get that, or when you learn from someone you'll get that. So by my experience I came to know these are important. So whatever we have overcome in our projects and whatever knowledge we have, so based on our experience, I'm saying that these are the important parameters. SAP will never provide that this is important. They don't provide any tick mark so saying that it is an important. As a developer, based on the experience, you'll get that so and so parameters are important. No hard code rule to recognize an important parameter. Just with experience, you get this. Then similarly, in case of delete entity method, there are two things like, again, IT key tab, that is the important one. There is no exporting parameter. Is for receiving the input from front end. That's the main parameter. IT key tab for delete entity method. And similarly, you can see there are some more methods like we are going to use them as a developer. We are going to use a method like get stream. You can see there is a method like get stream. Get stream is a method, so it contains some important parameters like IT key tab and ER stream. IT key tab and ER stream, these two are important. Let me write them. Sixth one, get underscore stream, that is a method. And based on my experience, I can say IT key tab is the most important, that is for receiving the input from front end. And there is one more parameter, that is ER stream. ER stream, most important. This is for sending the output file, output in the form of a file to the front end app. So ER stream is going to send output in the form of a file to the front end. ER stream is a parameter for sending the output file to the front end. It can send any type of file. File means any type of file it can send to the front end. So here file can be anything, any type of file format. And there is one more method like seventh one. Let me check what are the other methods. You can go back and you can see there is a method like create stream. Create stream, and it contains some parameters. Under create stream method, there are two important things. One is IS media resource. IS media resource. The another one is ER entity. So IS media resource, then of course IT key tab, then ER entity. These three are important parameters. If you are using create stream method, then IS media resource. IS media resource, this is for receiving, the input in the form of a file from front end. IS media resource is a parameter for receiving the input in the form of a file. It is used for receiving input in the form of a file, means it can be any file again, and it can receive the input as a file from front end. And then, of course, you can use IT key tab. This is for receiving just input, not the file, other inputs. IS media resource will receive the input in the form of a file, but IT key tab is a general parameter for receiving general input, not the file. But both will be useful for receiving. And ER entity, it is for sending the output to the file, output to the front end. ER entity for sending the output to the front end app. And then let me check here, update stream. Update stream also contains same parameters, that is IS media resource and IT key tab. IS media resource and IT key tab. So just let me write it. Update underscore stream is a standard method, and this also contains IS media resource. And of course, this is also for receiving the input as a file from the front end. It is also for receiving the input as a file from the front end. Whichever file is uploaded in the front end, that file you can receive into OData service. The file which is uploaded from front end, you can receive into OData service by using IS media resource parameter. And similarly, IT key tab, it's a general parameter for capturing or for receiving general input values. For receiving the input but not the file. Please remember that. And delete underscore stream, it's also a method. You can see IT key tab is the main parameter for delete stream method. This is for receiving the input, not the file, it's general input from front end. And not only that, we have other methods like, you can see there is one more important method for us, that is execute action. Execute action is another method here. And it contains some parameters. It contains some parameters, that is IV action name, IT parameter, and ER data. These three are important. IV action name, IT parameter, ER data. So let me write that here. Execute action, that is a method. Contains IV action name. This is for receiving the function import from front end. And it will receive the function import name. What is function import? We'll understand in the coming classes. Don't worry now. So it is going to capture the name of the function import. IV action name is used to capture the name of the function import from the front end. And similarly, IT parameter is another parameter. This is also for receiving the input from front-end app. Then ER data. ER data is another parameter that is for sending output to front end. It is for sending the output to front-end app. So this method is also important. Execute action. First two are for receiving, the last one is for sending. How to use, how to test those things, we are going to do it in the coming classes practically. Don't worry. And there is one more method. Let me open that. There is one more method like copy data to reference. You can see copy data to reference is another method here. Copy data to reference. So under copy data to reference, there are two parameters, IS data, CR data. So let me write that somewhere here. Copy data to ref. That means reference. It's a method. So the parameters are IS data. IS data, that is for receiving the input, of course, from front end application. Front end application can be UI5 or Fiori. Whatever we are discussing in OData and whatever we are going to discuss in UI5, they are also applicable for Fiori. Don't think Fiori is totally a different concept. Fiori is also going to make use of the OData principles, OData services, as well as Fiori as well as UI5 concepts. SAP is nothing but it is going to utilize OData services as well as it is going to utilize SAP UI5 techniques. On top of that, we have some more techniques additional in Fiori. But the main thing is OData plus UI5 can be like Fiori. It can be applied inside a Fiori. So whatever we are learning from today till the 40th class, whatever we learn from first class to 40th class, okay, that can be applied in Fiori in 40th to 50th class. So please remember that. First 40 classes, whatever you learn, the same thing, same techniques, slightly different, but the same techniques we are going to apply inside the Fiori in the last 10 to 15 sessions. So don't think Fiori is totally a different thing. Whatever we are discussing, that is also part of Fiori. So anyhow, that you will understand when we go to that topic. But so ER data is another parameter. Sorry, CR data is another parameter. This will send the output record for sending the output to front end. So please notice that. And developer point of view, there is one more method like get message manager. Get message manager is also another method here. It's a standard method. You can see this. And get message manager is a method and it contains one single parameter, RO message container. So this parameter is responsible for sending the messages to the front. This RO message container is responsible for sending the messages to the front end. So let me write that somewhere here. RO message container. It is for sending the messages to front-end applications. After executing the service, I want to send some message, then you can utilize this method with RO message container as a parameter. RO message container as a parameter, you can use it for sending a message to front end. Similarly, let me go to some more methods like this is not of that use, but you can see here there is one method like get expanded entity. Get expanded entity is another method, and it contains mainly IT key tab, IO expand, ER entity. Then ET expanded tech classes. There are some 3 to 4 important things, so let me highlight that. Get expanded entity is a method, and it contains IT tab as one of the parameter, and IO expand is another parameter. IT key tab, IO expand, then ER entity and ET expanded classes. ER entity, then ET expanded tech classes. So these are the parameters. We are going to use it. At that time, I'll be telling you what is, which one is for input, which one is for output. When we implement that, entity set, get expanded entity set method. So this contains some 3 to 4 important parameters. Let me check here. Get expanded entity set. There may be several parameters, but most of the parameters, if you closely observe, there are some parameters which are outdated. There are some parameters which are outdated. You can see obsolete methods. Here, obsolete methods are nothing but outdated methods. Sorry, these obsolete parameters are nothing but outdated parameters. These are all outdated parameters. There is of no use if you use these things. They are of no use because they are obsolete here. So in the next version, SAP is going to remove these things. So be careful. Obsolete parameters are nothing but outdated parameters, so you should not use in your implementation because in the next version they are going to remove these things. So whichever parameters are obsolete, you should not use it because in the coming version, those things should not, they are not going to utilize these things. So you will get some problems if you upgrade to a new version. So whatever is obsolete, please don't touch them. So one of the parameters is IT key tab. Then you can use like IO tech request context. That is important. And then ER entity. Of course, IO expand. Then ER entity set. ER entity set. Then ET expanded tech clauses. So these are the inputs. So these will be inputs. These are nothing but going to receive. So IO expand also will be receiving point of view it is used. And ER entity, it is for sending the output to front end. So this also is for sending output. And the last two parameters, ER entity set, ET expanded tech clauses, so they act as for sending output to front end applications. And these things for input. For receiving the input, these first two options. So in real-time point of view, or in majority of the services, so among these 14 methods, we use some of the methods in different applications. There may be several methods, but developer point of view, these methods are very vital in implementing and developing our OData's web services. Some methods are used by the framework, but as a developer, we use these methods for sending and receiving the data. So let me write a simple note here. All the above methods are used by developer for implementing their functionalities. All the above methods which I wrote, they are used by developer for the functionalities. And I mean to say, different methods are for different functionalities. Different methods are used for implementing different functionalities. So what do you mean by those functionalities? You will understand when I go for practical part only. At present, this is what I can give you, but when we go for example, you will understand method to use in which situation. For examples, you will get clarity about which method should be used in which situation and which coding should be implemented in which methods. But as of now, keep an eye on this method. There are around 14 methods, very vital. So please focus on these things, developer point of view. And you can see here, let me tell you one more point. So MPC class related, that means model provider class. Yesterday I was talking about some points about model provider class. So in model provider class, there will be a table structure, there will be a table type. So table structures, table types, which is registered in, can be used in these different methods, which I gave you. Tables PC class can be used inside the 14 methods of DPC extension class. So MPC model provider contains structures and table types of OData service. So the point here is, as a developer, we can use table structures or table types of MPC class inside DPC extension class. So please notice that very commonly used. What we can do is we can use the table structures, the table types of our MPC class inside DPC extension class, because developer has to write code in DPC extension class, so you can use them, structures and table types. So that's the point you need to notice. You can use table structure or table type of MPC class inside DPC extension class. So these are the things that you need to notice, and what I'll do is I'll stop for today, and in tomorrow's class we'll start the actual practical part of OData web services. So tomorrow there won't be much theory. Tomorrow it will be example 1, then day after tomorrow example 2. So we go example by example. Okay, so let me start practical part from tomorrow. Okay, yeah. If you have any doubts, you can ask me now. Let me
Hi
give
Vijay,
chance.
Praveen here.
Hi Vijay, Mahendra here.